games matter. You have to have your core games of blackjack, roulette, and baccarat. But after that, the game shows are really starting to make a big difference in the U.S. And that is, they're incredibly complex, they're expensive, they're hard to navigate and hard to manage. But it gives you a pretty tremendous marketing asset to work with, to provide to the players.
This podcast is sponsored by Pragmatic Solutions, the player account management platform chosen by today's smart betting and gaming operators. Don't let technical constraints delay you from achieving your business goals. Expand your business, boost your margins, and dominate the market in any leading regulated jurisdiction with our powerful, flexible, and secure iGaming platform. Enjoy its extensive marketing tools, compliance protection, real-time data, and a wide portfolio of over 1,000 industry providers. It's time to upgrade your technology. Let Pragmatic Solutions show you the modern approach. Visit pragmatic.solutions and join the smart thinkers.
This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Play, a leading game developer providing player favorites to the most successful brands across the industry. With an award-winning multi-product portfolio of slots, live casino, bingo, virtual sports, and more, Pragmatic Play is powering up new possibilities of play through one single API. Visit pragmaticplay.com and discover your favorite every time.
Bingo Bango Bongo, Jason March, finally here on the podcast, the VP of Gaming of DraftKings. How are you doing today, Jason?
Great, Pierre. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely brilliant, thank you. It's been a long time coming, this episode. We've been planning it for a while. We've been discussing back and forth, and finally we managed to get you here together. I'm very, very excited to be here with you today, Jason. You're obviously the long-standing VP of iGaming over at DraftKings. You built that department from scratch. You obviously have a long career in the industry in general, starting all the way back in the 90s, I believe, on the floor of a casino. So I think my first question to you today, Jason, before we kind of dive into the future of iGaming in the United States and particularly what you guys have cooking at DraftKings, is can you just give us your background a little bit? Talk about your love for gambling since a tender age.
Sure. Sounds good. First of all, thanks for having me, Pierre. I'm honored to be on your podcast. I think this is essential listening for people in the industry, so it's great to be on the show. I've been in gaming 30 years, both in land-based and online. I know by looking at me you can't tell, but first 15 years of my career was in land-based gaming, right from start as a dealer in Windsor, Ontario, across the river from Detroit. Worked my way up to general manager at casinos throughout Canada and the Caribbean, and then got into online about 15 years ago. I saw that as an opportunity for future growth and something that would grow the industry over the next decades to come. And I like the innovation opportunity with online gaming because I felt that land-based had some stagnation there in terms of development of new opportunities in gaming. So I made the switch into online gaming, worked at an unregulated offshore casino for a brief period of time, and then went and helped start regulated online gaming across Canada and opened up, based in British Columbia, helped open up a lot of the provinces there. So it's been a fun journey. And then 7 years ago, I joined DraftKings and helped them start up their online gaming division. And it's certainly been the highlight of my career to this point.
All right, so Jason, yeah, it's interesting. Obviously you took over the iGaming department of DraftKings right about the time that more states legalized for iGaming, and the space became more proliferated in the United States. And I'm curious to know kind of like the journey in these kind of 6 years that you've been running the department. If you can talk a little bit of how things started and how things have developed within DraftKings iGaming from then to now.
Yeah, I mean, the founders reached out to me to join DraftKings, and I was hesitant at first because at the time I was actually running online product for IGT for North America. So I had a great job with a very respected company within the industry, and DraftKings was still a very small company at that time. Obviously, a big player in the daily fantasy sports space, but not a gaming brand. And the founders reached out, and after meeting with them, the three founders that started DraftKings 13 years ago are still with the company and still run the company today. So they're wired right. After meeting with them, they're good humans. They develop a good culture within the company, and they said they're aggressive as a company and they're in this to win this. And the big thing that really got me was they wanted to own their own technology. And knowing the limitations of a lot of companies within the gaming industry, relying on multiple other companies and Frankensteining together your platform and different pieces of the business um, can be troublesome and cumbersome. So, building things from the ground up and viewing ourselves as a technology company first was incredibly appealing. So I made the jump to DraftKings in 2018 and started the casino division. And they gave me pretty free reign to build this from the ground up and build the team, but also build the technology. And it's been incredibly rewarding to do that. Within 6 months, we started our own game studio as well. So we build our own game content in house. So it's been a big piece of our business. But the journey with DraftKings has been tremendous. It's a great company, great culture, great people. They do business the right way. It's been fun to be a part of.
Yeah, brilliant, Jason. And you point something really important out there is that one of the only major online gambling and sports betting company today that is founder-led is DraftKings. Certainly in the US market, you have Bet365 with the Coates family that are still running that empire. But on the US side of things, DraftKings is kind of the only one with this founder-led mentality, let's say, which is puts DraftKings in a pretty unique spot in that regard. I'm curious to know, so fast forward now to 2025, you built the department of iGaming. You've been wildly successful, of course. DraftKings has a pretty impressive lion's share of the market share on that vertical. What are some of the trends that you are paying attention to at the moment in the iGaming landscape in the United States today?
Yeah, the iGaming landscape is fast moving, a lot more fast moving than land based, and that's one of the reasons that drew me to it. I would say we try to do a lot of different things. Live dealer's been a big component of iGaming. We're the largest operator of live dealer in the U.S. We have over 300 tables, but you're starting to see things like jackpots become a larger piece of the business now. Multiplayer games are starting to creep into the space a lot more. More social player interaction games are starting to come in, and then you start to see a lot of other things that are on a horizon, like interactive slots and things like that. So it's a pretty interesting space, and I'm a firm believer if you don't disrupt, you're going to get disrupted. So we always try and stay ahead of the curve from that perspective.
Yeah, and I'm curious. I mean, that's really impressive with 300 dedicated live tables at this point. That's a massive operation, of course. And I'm curious to know, and I'm sure it gives you some headaches on a day-to-day basis as well. But I'm curious to know, Jason. So, especially the iGaming vertical is a fairly commoditized product if you compare operator versus operators. You generally see the same games from the same suppliers being shared across most operators. And to that end, I'm curious to know, where do you find an edge as DraftKings versus other operators in the US today, like fighting against this commoditized feeling, let's say?
Yeah, it really is very very commoditized, and especially in the early days, it was hard to set yourself apart. Up until we have 48 partners right now that supply us with game content. We have about 4,500 games live on the site, unique game titles. But up until 3 years ago, we only had 6 partners supplying us games, and we had
Oh, wow.
a couple hundred games. So it was really hard to differentiate. It was really, who can give you the most money, and it was a race to the bottom from that perspective. So very early on, like within the first few months, I wanted to make sure that part of our strategy was building our own content and controlling our own destiny from that perspective, and also jackpots. So we started a game studio early on, and then 3 years ago we acquired a jackpots company out of Israel. And we've really used those two components to drive the business for innovation and separate ourselves from the rest of the industry. And we've
Brilliant.
developed 130 games in-house ourselves that are live on site now. We output about 30 plus games per year. And the big difference with that is we're willing to take risks that other companies can't. So I believe strongly if you don't have failures, you're not doing enough. So we take some bigger swings that some major game suppliers can't take. We can have more risk. A game usually takes you anywhere from 6 to 9 months to build. We've taken upwards of 2 years to build some of our games.
Oh,
So
wow.
where a lot of companies just couldn't invest that time into a single game.
Yeah, for sure. The luxury of time, that's for sure. And speaking of which, of course, you are clearly an expert in gaming content, not only from this role, but as you point out, you come from IDT, which is one of the biggest game producers as well. And so I'm really curious to know, considering that you are such an expert in this space, what are, like, if we were to do a bit of an analysis of the game content landscape today, can you talk about, like, who are, in your opinion, let's say, the hottest game studios right now? What are the best games in your opinion? Are there any trends within the space that is important for game studios to take into consideration? Can you go into detail? What are your favorites right now?
Yeah, one thing I've learned building games, and I'll go back to Farmville. Farmville in the U.S. has been an enormous game, and if you told me when that game launched that it would make $1 billion, I would have said you were crazy.
Yeah.
So one thing I've learned to do is to never say no to a crazy idea in a game. So so one of my most fun meetings every week is our game studio meeting, and some people say, okay, just stay with me for a minute when they bring up a concept for a game. And I've learned to never pick up because nothing is too crazy and nothing is out of the realm of possibility for what will work. And when speaking with our game suppliers, if anybody says I know exactly that this game is going to work in this market, they're probably wrong, because logic doesn't always live in the gaming world, and you don't know what's going to resonate with players. So building unique games, unique titles, unique themes, and even names. There's some crazy names out there of games. You just don't know what is going to work. So it's a fun space to play in, but you have to be ready for failures too. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
interesting.
there isn't can you ever predict, let's say, if a game is going to blow up and become the hit of the year, let's say, or is it always a surprise for you?
I mean, we're a very analytical company. We're very data driven
Mm.
in a lot of aspects, but like I said, logic doesn't live in the games world, and you just
Yeah.
don't know what's going to work or what isn't going to work. I mean, Cleopatra is a good example. That was the third game that was built on that math model and that engine, and that the first two didn't work. So you have to be willing to try new stuff. And a game like Cash Eruption, which is a very big game in the U.S. market right now, that wasn't even intended to really come to the U.S. market, and it's a new model that doesn't
Mm.
exist in land-based. So what we've seen in the early days of the U.S. market is land-based games generally perform better than games that come out of Europe that are generally big hits over there. But this game was the exception and has done
Yeah.
extremely well.
Why is that, do you think, Jason, that it's such a difference between let's say, the European, who is still a westernized kind of player with similar cultural values and all of that, where games are tried and tested on the European side, but they, for some reason, don't work as well as in the US side? Why is that, do you think?
I think part of it is trust. It's new in the U.S. market, and players don't fully trust online iGaming yet in the U.S. So they go to what they know. So they'll go to a Cleopatra, they'll go to Wheel of Fortune, they'll go to a game that is in a land-based casino, which does limit the number of titles that do well in the U.S. market. But we're starting to see a shift more towards players' appetite. Embracing some new content that is innovative. Even stepper titles, 3 reel and 5 reel slot machines, perform generally higher than normal in the U.S. market, and that's because that's what they're used to in land-based casinos.
Yeah, yeah. And do you see innovation taking place in the US side of things too? I mean, we're still playing real-based games, right, from the 1800s or whatever. That's still being the center of online gambling now in 2025. But at the same time, there is some innovation taking place. Crash-based games, which became this like massive hit through Aviator. I think that was also one of those cases that it would just be impossible to predict that. That Aviator would become, a multi-billion-euro company based on this one game, But do you see there's space for innovation when it comes to the game mechanics itself in the US? Is there any case studies on that front? Do you see that of games that have succeeded without, let's say, this traditional wheel-based format?
Yeah, I very much so, and I think that's part of the reason I got into online gaming is because I believe that it is ripe for innovation, and I love the industry, and it is ripe for change. Social gaming became a big piece over the last decade. Skill-based gaming became big over the last decade, and games like Candy Crush and Farmville have been enormous hits in the U.S. market. So I think you have to incorporate things like that into the industry. And most importantly, what we're seeing is player interaction within the game. They don't just want to hit a spin button anymore. They want to get player choice. So they want to choose their bonus round, or they want to, decision points within the game. And that's where I think, a game like Rocket, which is our crash style game that we built almost 5 years ago now, was such a hit because players got to choose, and you feel like you're more in control and you have a decisive path within the game instead of a predetermined path when you hit a spin button.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like it's such a simple thing with the crash games that it's just the plane or the rocket taking off, and you just click stop whenever your nerves run out, basically. But there's this like magical tension between winning more or losing everything. that is unique to the crash niche. It's a really interesting concept from that regard. There isn't really anything like it, I don't think.
Agree. We're trying to capture that with some of our new content coming out as well. So we've got a few titles this year coming out that I'm very excited about. I can't really disclose them fully yet, but it's hard to capture that same magic that you get with the player interaction within a game. But if you can capture player choice, player element of skill, or even a perceived element of skill, and then a fear of missing out within a game, that's kind of what you try and capture within a game as you build it.
Yeah, incredible innovation on that front. And just going back to the question on the game studios and the games currently, I'm curious to know, perhaps without picking favorites, let's say, but are there any particular game studios that you are really paying attention to right now? Let's say, like, are they up and coming out of the 50-ish or so partners that you have? Are there any particular ones that are up and coming, that are performing better, that you are keeping an eye on right now, let's say?
There's a few. I would say there's some small ones. Like Game Code is a good one that's out of Eastern Europe that does really, really well. They know games really well, and they've built some good games specifically for the U.S. market. And we find that matters quite a bit. Then there's the large ones like Games Global and White Hat. They've made some really good traction in the U.S. and they don't have land-based titles, but they know games well, and they've built for the U.S. Used U.S. brands. And Games Global in particular has a unique model where they have dozens of studios in-house building different components of the games, and then they piece them together. So that gives them quite a big advantage as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And Jason, I'm curious to know as well, like now, as you have been playing games for a long time, like if you were to go on a casino session yourself, like what would be, let's say, 2 or 3 games that you would play yourself if you would sit down for a session at this point?
Yeah, I mean, our office here in Vegas, we have a casino right across the street that opened last year, so they're very close to us here, and we quite often as a team go around to the different casinos to see what's in the market and see what's hot and what's not. And what we're seeing in even in land bases, some of the new games are more animated, more multi-level jackpots, and more interaction within the game. So the Huff and Puff is a big game that's in the U.S. market right now. It's really taken over a lot of the casino floors. And then you've got old stalwarts like video poker. Video poker is such a big piece of the business in the U.S. market that you still have to focus on that and make sure that you have the best offering of that in the U.S. So.
Yeah. Myself, I'm a very simple man, Jason, and in the last 15 or so years, I've been going to casinos. My first and only love on the casino floor is Goldfish. By Light and Wonder. These days it's in the corner somewhere, but it is still there. But I go back to that game, and I've been there 15 years, and I'll never let it go.
Yeah, I mean, Goldfish, Cleopatra, Wheel of Fortune, those games are still in our top 20 games. They still perform well, and I think they always will. They're never going to go away. I mean, Wheel of Fortune is the biggest slot title of all time. So
yeah, for sure. And what about trends in games at the moment? Like people talk a lot about the younger generation. Let's say have a shorter attention span, for example, than it used to. Is that something? Do you think that is driving trends as well in the popular games going forward? Is that something you're thinking about in general? Kind of how to capture that up and coming generation?
Yeah, very much so. So I think you nailed it right there. We're shorter attention span, and I think that was driven by a lot of the social gaming market. So the next generation of gambler has played very differently than what an older demographic will, for example. So what we see in our high value players is they still play the old stepper reels, and simplicity matters there. But with the younger generation and the next age bracket of gambler, you have to interact within the game. So it can't just be a spin button. You have to either provide a totally different game type, or within that game you have to provide engagement features within the game, or how they play the game, a jackpot within the game, even buying directly into a bonus round, as we found very effective within games.
Yeah, brilliant. I want to move over to the live casino segment as well now. You mentioned earlier, of course, that you have north of 300 dedicated tables today for DraftKings, which is an achievement on its own right. Talk a little bit more about the live casino vertical in general. Again, just going back to when you started at DraftKings to development these days. You used to have kind of Evolution used to have a monopoly, I suppose, with DraftKings, but now you have different suppliers on that front. Like, how is the product evolving over time? Game shows, for example, becoming more popular now. Like, how important is that vertical for DraftKings?
Yeah, it's a very important vertical. So live dealer is a big piece of our business, and as you said, Evolution had a monopoly in the space until the last couple of years, and we have a few partners that deliver content to us now. And up until a couple of years ago, I would say that there was a very wide delta in the quality of content coming from Evolution compared to everybody else. But I think that gap is closed. So games matter. You have to have your core games of blackjack, roulette, and baccarat. But after that, the game shows are really starting to make a big difference in the U.S. And that is, they're incredibly complex. They're expensive. They're hard to navigate and hard to manage. But it gives you a pretty tremendous marketing asset to work with to provide to the players. But game shows are big in the U.S. They're a big part of daytime TV, and people grow up on them. And as people age, they watch them in their later years as well. So it's a very engaging piece, and I think it goes back to some of the other game development where it's not just hitting a spin button. There's interaction within those game shows, and that's what players want to see. So that's why they become an important piece of the offering in the U.S.
Yeah, I would just imagine that the US culture is so primed for the game shows. I was speaking to Playtech, the CEO over there, a while ago, and they are looking now, of course, to bring game shows into the casino floor as well. And it is such an engaging way to sit, as an audience member and being able to participate in a live game show. It's so ingrained in the US culture. It seems like with Wheel of Fortune and The Price is Right and all of these games, of course. But I suppose something that is holding the vertical back somewhat is still that you are ring fenced state per state, right? That a game show has to be built for that state specifically, right? And that makes it quite difficult for the suppliers, as opposed to kind of commit to these really expensive productions, if I'm right.
Yeah, it is a challenge in the U.S. for sure, because right now we're only in 5 states, or DraftKings is only in 5 states, and 3 of them are smaller states, being West Virginia and Connecticut. So it makes it hard to be economically feasible to invest millions of dollars in a single game that you're unsure will even work. And even state by state, our top 25 games state by state are very different in a lot of cases. So even if that game show has worked in Pennsylvania or Michigan or New Jersey, there's no guarantee it's going to work in West Virginia or Connecticut. So it is a challenge for Playtech and Evolution to invest high levels of money into a single game. But I think as the U.S. grows, we will get to the point where we grow a lot and get to 15 to 25 states over the next 10 years. So.
Yeah. When you go into your supplier meetings, Jason, is there anything particular that you're asking the suppliers for? Like, is there anything missing in the US online gambling space today, in your opinion, that you would really like to see at this point that the suppliers are not thinking about?
Yeah, it's a great question. The one line that I always use is the weird guy in the corner that nobody talks to that's been working on stuff for 10 years. I want his stuff. Because I think that's the innovation that has probably been shelved and probably been pushed off to the side or down in priority, because the studios usually go with safer place. And I want to see the different stuff to try and engage players differently, because in a crowded space of 4,500 games in New Jersey, it's hard to stand out. And a lot of the slots, in fairness, do look the same. When you look at a monster game like Buffalo, we have 25 different Buffalo versions on site.
Yeah.
So, everybody has to have a Buffalo theme. Everybody has to have an Irish theme. Everybody has to have an Egyptian theme. And that's because of the success of a few games in the marketplace. So it becomes harder to stand out. So, I think you really have to take big swings and try things wildly different.
Yeah, brilliant. And on that note, you mentioned, of course, you have 50 plus partners today. Your calendar is more and more taken up by meeting the suppliers, so on and so forth. And I would imagine, I get this question actually in the preparation for this podcast from some suppliers who are really curious because they are trying to break in with DraftKings and companies like DraftKings, and they are wondering what is the best way to approach someone like you, Jason, when they want to pitch a game or they want to pitch a software or a solution of some sort. How do you best approach someone like you, Jason, that has such an incredibly busy calendar and obviously a big to-do list and so on? Like, how do you break through if you have an exciting product to show you?
I've never said no to a partner, so I'm always willing to try stuff. And even the small studios, I think it's going to be harder for us to get innovation from the larger companies and the legacy companies. So the innovation, I believe, is going to come from the small studios, and that's why I don't say no. It
Mm.
doesn't mean it's always going to be a quick process with the small studios because we do have a backlog. But I'm on LinkedIn and I respond frequently to people on there and set them up with the team to be able to explore the opportunities. But I will caution it is not easy nor cheap to do business in the U.S. because each state is like a
That's the
separate
thing. Yeah.
country, and regulatory requirements are different state by state. So if they're willing to go through that process, we'll launch them.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's the prerequisite in some regard, right? There are like 1,000 game studios globally today, but only a handful who are willing to go through that expensive process. And if they do, of course, then they should have something to talk about. You would imagine, yeah.
yeah, and there's a long time between return on investment as well. Like a game, if we start a game today, that's probably not going to be launched till a year from now. And that's if we get a fast regulatory process through the state. Because some states, some games, they get backlogged and it might take a year for that game to get approved. So for a new small supplier who maybe not has the financial backing that a large company has, they might have 2 years before they see a return on the investment in the US. So it is a tough business in the US, but there's a lot of money to be made here, and it's really a big opportunity as the U.S. expands. But we do want to see more states open up in the U.S. for sure.
Brilliant, Jason. Talk a little bit more about your in-house game studio as well. Particularly, I'm curious about. It's all about positioning for the game suppliers, right? They all fight for the top position on your index page, and as you are building your own games, you are kind of competing against your partners to some extent, right? How do you keep that dynamic between your own content and the third-party content? And then I'm curious to hear just a little bit more about the strategy from your in-house studio as well.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it comes up often in our meetings with suppliers, with our partners. Our partners are great to us, and we want to make sure that we treat them well as well. It needs to work for both sides. So part of the thing that we did for development about 2.5 years ago, we spent a enormous amount of effort redoing our lobby, and in anticipation of a few dozen suppliers coming into the U.S. market over the last couple of years, we knew this was going to be a challenge. And I believe very strongly in an open marketplace. So if we build, DraftKings Blackjack or Golden Nugget Blackjack, we also have to have IGT and Evolution and Light and Wonders Blackjack because players may not trust our game, or they may have a bad experience on our game or have a losing session, and you have to give them choice. So, and we may not build the best game. I think it's important to have opportunities and options out there for players. When we redid our lobby, we used to only be able to position one game of the week, and that was it. And now we can have multiple games of the week, plus game of the month, plus featured games. We make sure that we give everybody equal footing in the lobby and position the games frequently. We have a large promotion coming up with one of our major suppliers, and we have 6 of their games featured over the course of a month, 6 in a family. So, we have to treat them well as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
invest. So.
yeah, brilliant. Then talk more about the in-house game studio itself. So you spoke earlier about the fact that you have that luxury of taking risk and so on and so forth. Is that kind of the purpose at its core with the third-party game studio? Oh, sorry, not the third-party game studio, your own proprietary studio. Is that the idea, kind of with your own studio, that you can experiment widely, you can try new things while some of the major suppliers are maybe not willing to take those risks? Or can you talk a bit more about the strategy of your in-house studio?
Yeah, initially we were very table games heavy as a site. So normally you see 90% slot play, 10% table games play in the site in the US. We were almost the opposite of that. So I really focused on table games in the early days. We wanted to own blackjack on our site. We wanted to own table games, and most importantly, I think it was important to have the games that you see in land-based casinos in the US on site in iGaming in the US. So we focused in that area initially where others weren't. As then notably our partners, but also our competitors were not focusing in those areas. I think we did a great job of that. We have 35 versions of blackjack live on the site now, and it's been a big reason why we continue to dominate in the table game space. Slots, we never had. You know, there's a lot of experts in slots, and most of the companies that give us games are slot exclusive. So we stepped around that space and saw pockets of opportunity with jackpots and blackjack and table games, and even seasonal and holiday variants. So doing Christmas games, doing Thanksgiving games. doing Valentine's Day games, things like that. We saw as more of an opportunity to market and push different types of opportunity that weren't coming into the market from 48 different suppliers.
Brilliant. And I'm also curious about how you think about cross-selling from other products into the iGaming vertical within DraftKings. And one acquisition, a really smart acquisition that DraftKings did last year was of Jackpocket, right, the lottery supplier. And my understanding and my guess is that that's part of that acquisition was a cross-sell opportunity, right, to bring in new liquidity of players into the other products of DraftKings. And I'm curious to know how you think about the lottery vertical within DraftKings and how they intersect with the iGaming product.
Yeah, I'm tremendously excited about this acquisition for DraftKings. I think it's a great fit. I think it gives our players even less reason to ever play anywhere else. And running online gaming in Canada, we also ran online lottery side by side with it. So I know the opportunity here well. And normally we, especially as a sports focused company, initially we had what we call tentpole events around Super Bowl and March Madness, which we're in right now, plus the start of NFL season in September. Those were the major pivots for the company for marketing, but also for traffic into the site. Whereas lottery gives you a number of those throughout the year. So with Powerball in the US, you get billion-dollar jackpots and sometimes $2 billion jackpots, and that drives a tremendous amount of traffic to retail stores, and now hopefully online to DraftKings and Golden Nugget to be able to buy your lottery tickets online. So, it just gives another opportunity to acquire players differently. And, in Canada, upwards of 80% of every adult bought at least one lottery ticket a year, which is far higher than people that play online gaming or online sports betting. So, we see it as an opportunity for tremendous acquisition, but also engagement throughout the year with players.
Yeah, brilliant. And I suppose my final question for you here today, Jason, is just looking forward now as well into the iGaming space. It's still the early days in the iGaming space in the United States, right? Some people feel like the dust has settled somewhat, but on the iGaming space, you still only have 6 or 7 states that are live with this product at the moment. How is DraftKings and how are you thinking about the future days? And do you see this also as like right now the space has settled, or do you still see that again we are in front of perhaps a bigger push within that space? How do you think about the future of the iGaming space in DraftKings?
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't know what the legalization landscape looks like at the moment. It's uncertain times from a political standpoint, but
Yeah.
I fully believe that the U.S. will, more states will open up over the course of the next decade. Legalization matters, taxation matters, and regulatory oversight of online iGaming matters. And I think that's what we'll start to see over time. But we're in 25 plus states for online sports betting, and we're in 40 plus states for daily fantasy sports. So we have a good presence across the U.S. We're building regulatory relationships, and supplying taxes to each of those states. So, I think it just takes time. It took 15 plus years to open up Canada, and it's the same thing here.
Yeah, brilliant. And I agree with what you say on the taxation front as well. There are more studies being done right now. One of them with our partner company Blask, which is highlighting the black market more in the United States. That actually, states that are not legal for online gambling today think that there is no online gambling happening, but it's not true actually. Some of the states, like Florida, for example, which is supposed to be a monopoly. It's turning out that actually the market share of that regulated operator is only about 22%, with 78% going to the black market, right? It's like massive volumes, right? And you would imagine that in the future there would be a space to kind of highlight the growth and the enormity of the black market in order as well, of course, to push through legalization to make sure that taxes are being produced and companies are doing the right thing.
Yeah, regulation matters. We take responsible gaming very seriously, and I've worked in land-based, so I've worked with gamblers in person, and I see the impact of what tools give to players to be able to monitor their activity, and you don't have that in a lot of the offshore sites. So it's something that I think is very important as online iGaming expands in the U.S. and something that we all have to take very seriously. It's a big piece of the business, and I think people are playing online, and you just have to give them an option that is safe.
Yeah, brilliant. Jason, thank you so much for taking your time here today. I've been very excited to meet you and catch up and learn more about the DraftKings iGaming casino side. You guys are obviously doing extremely well, so great to hear straight from the horse's mouth of all the success. So thank you so much, Jason, and I wish you
Thank
all
you
the
so
best.
much, Pierre. Thanks for having me. Take care.